Madam Speaker, I now yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, a member of the Financial Services, Oversight and Government Reform Committees, and Chair of the House Task Force on Anti-Terrorism Funding, Mr. Lynch.
The gentleman is recognized for how many minutes? 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of House Resolution 63, which opposes the President's plan to escalate the war in Iraq. I do so because I am in total agreement with Generals Casey and Abizaid, who have said that what is needed in Iraq is a political solution and not a military one, and that additional troops are not recommended. I've had a chance to travel to Iraq 5 times now, and based on my own observations in places like Fallujah and Tikrit, in Al-Qaim out on the Syrian border, I firmly believe that it is the Iraqi people who must ultimately decide whether they are committed to building a better life for their children through democracy, or whether they are more committed to an all-or-nothing sectarian conflict between Sunni and Shia. Madam Speaker, I believe that packing more troops into the narrow streets of Baghdad will be a disaster. As our daily briefings indicate, the dominant conflict now on the ground in Iraq is no longer coalition forces against al-Qaeda and supporters of the Ba'athist regime. As the daily body counts of tortured and executed Iraqis indicate, the prevailing conflict on the ground in Iraq now is a brutal civil war between the Sunni and Shia militias, with our troops in the middle. In fact, at a recent hearing here in Washington, it was entitled, "Iraq, What Will It Take to Achieve National Reconciliation?" Basically, as this hearing pointed out, the key mission that we've given to our troops is to somehow now reconcile the differences between Sunni and Shia in Iraq. Just to be clear on this, Madam Speaker, the Sunni and Shia have been in frequent conflict since the year 632 AD, following the death of the Prophet Muhammad. That's what we've asked our troops to do, in essence, to convince the Iraqis now to stop killing each other and to embrace democracy instead. The President has now asked our brave sons and daughters to take up a police action, or essentially a civil affairs action, going door to door in Baghdad. The mission in Iraq has changed. I have to wonder, how many votes would the President and the Vice President have gotten initially if they had been honest and said, we want to send our sons and daughters to Iraq in order to reconcile the differences between the Sunni and the Shia who have been fighting for almost 1,400 years? Not many, I think. But that's where we now find ourselves and our troops. While the mission in Iraq has changed, the President is staying the course. What's more, he's decided to push even harder in the wrong direction. Now is the time that the American people have fairly asked, what will Congress do? Many of my colleagues believe that this resolution doesn't go far enough. And in honesty, I tend to agree with that assessment. But I do believe that this resolution presents a solid and meaningful step in the right direction. There will be a further debate in coming weeks on the funding on how to best protect our troops while transitioning to Iraqi control in Iraq, and we'll have more opportunity to do that. Lastly, I'd like to address the argument that the continuing war in Iraq is necessary for the fight in the global war on terrorism. As I've said before, I've been to Iraq 5 times now. One of the questions that I've repeatedly asked our people on the ground is, how much of this fight in Iraq is part of the global war on terror? How much of it is involving foreign fighters and al-Qaeda? Unanimously, they have recommended that it's about 10% of the fight in Iraq. So 90% of our costs, 90% of our sacrifice is in a matter that has nothing to do with the global war on terror. In fact, they now say that the Mahdi Army, the Defense Department, the main Shia militia, has replaced al-Qaeda as the most dangerous force in increasing violence there. If we are truly committed to global war on terror, I might point out we have a situation in southeast Afghanistan and in Waziristan, and where the Taliban, who actually did support al-Qaeda and who actually did involve themselves in the attacks on September 11th, are building support. While we spent $350 billion in Iraq, Pakistan has meanwhile allowed a safe haven to be established for the Taliban. If we're indeed committed to protecting America in the global war on terror, I would suggest that there are smarter and better ways to do that. Yes, the American people are waiting for this Congress to take a stand. It's time to step up. I ask my colleagues to support this resolution. It is the first step in eventually bringing the troops home safely. Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's